guys, welcome back to another episode of Mikey Reacts. Thank you for being here. I am your host, Mikey, and today we are reacting to one of my favorite content creators. He's quickly become one of my favorite content creators. He is Laurence from Lost in the Pond. He is one of me. He is a British man who has moved to the United States and found himself a brand new life. I'm a few steps behind him. I'm on my way to the US and I should be there way before the end of the year now. The timeline's even increased because my job has, well, not officially been confirmed, but the start date will be roughly around October time. So I'm really looking forward to my move to Florida, the Sunshine State, and getting my residential visa and of course my concealed carry permit shortly after that. But let's get to Laurence, and this is 8 wild animals that he only encountered after moving to the United States. Now he moved to the Midwest, I'm moving to Florida. I am more likely to encounter probably alligators than anything else. I'm quite familiar with alligators. I've been going to Florida since I was a little kid. So I know the do's and don'ts when it comes to gators. But maybe, and I'm pretty sure this is the case, in the Midwest they're going to have more different, a larger variety of species compared to Florida. I want to see exactly what Laurence has to say and what he's encountered and whether it's anything different from what I've encountered or what I will encounter. Don't forget, guys, if you like this content, to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your subscription honestly is a huge help, and every single like really puts me in a position where this channel can grow. And comment down below any suggestions or any comments you have on the video. That helps the analytics too. I'm not begging you, but it would be absolutely amazing if you did. Don't forget to also check out my Instagram, Twitter, and my Patreon. You'll find those in the description of this video just down below. And any follow or like or subscription to Patreon, which is just $5 per month, would be absolutely amazing. Right, let's get to this.
Until the tour guide just casually pointed at the trees and said, oh, yeah, there's 8 bald eagles. What? What? Actually, that's amazing. Show me, make them fly. They're not remote controlled. They don't work like that. Hello, I'm Laurence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those pertains to nature, specifically wild animals. It feels like quite a while since I've seen any wild animals, unless you count my cat, who is an animal and is wild. And so because I'm still in quarantine and I crave nature, I thought this would be another good addition to the spring series that I've been doing. We've looked at the uproarious nature in which both countries have introduced invasive species to one another. We've also looked at how Britain doesn't have anything on America when it comes to domesticated pets. And so I thought it would be interesting, particularly for you Americans, to see kind of how unique some of your wildlife is. Some of the animals on this list,
very unique. You don't find it, a lot of you don't find it anywhere else in the world.
I should say, are endemic not just to the United States but North America, sometimes South America, and then you will find sort of instances of some of these dotted around the planet, but none of them cropped up in Britain, with the very possible exception of this.
A squirrel. Oh, raccoon.
Raccoons. The only real experience I had of them growing up in England was playing Super Mario Brothers 3, and that doesn't really count. So I was thrilled to bits to discover that they're a real animal, and they definitely exist here in North America. Just leave your bins out for 2 weeks and then you'll discover them, although in Britain you don't get a choice over that duration. Whenever I hear about raccoons from Americans, right, it's usually in the context of what utter pests they are, you know, going through your trash and stealing your discarded receipts and then assuming your financial information. But aside from all that, they are quite adorable. I
was about to say that whenever I see I've never obviously had to experience raccoons going through my trash or whatever it may be, but every time I've seen them, or like on TV, or whenever I just look at them or see them anywhere, I think they are really adorable. I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong if you guys have had negative experiences with them, but
look at, right? They've got these huge bushy tails, which is always fun, and they're amazing. But it looks like they have been slightly distributed around the world, or at least introduced. And while I did hear that some of them were introduced to Britain, that's got nothing on Germany. Look at this map. It's off the charts.
Really?
I had no idea that Germans were so acquainted with raccoons. Same with Japan. So that Japan. That explains the raccoon suit in Mario 3, though it doesn't explain why Mario turns into a statue while wearing one. Do raccoons do that in Japan? I have no idea. And that's because I didn't grow up with them or live in Japan. Whether you call them whistle pigs, woodchucks, or groundhogs, it's the same animal, essentially, and they're to be found mostly, when we're talking about America, in the eastern portion of the United States, which probably explains why I've encountered one. I lived in Indiana for about 8 years.
Am I going to find any in Florida, guys? Let me know down in the comments.
Before moving to Chicago, and especially while I lived in rural Indiana, you saw all manner of wildlife, and one of these was no exception. They love to burrow, don't they? And then they emerge from that burrow, usually on February 2nd. They time it to the T. I'm joking, I don't think there's any science behind that. But of course, February 2nd in the United States and Canada is Groundhog Day, right? And I'd heard of Groundhog Day only in the context of the film with Bill Murray.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was an actual thing, which goes back to apparently the Pennsylvania Dutch, who were superstitious, and they said that when the groundhog emerged on February 2nd, if it saw its own shadow, because, you know, the weather was clear, then that would mean that winter would go on. But if it didn't, it meant spring was imminent. Oh. This has turned out to also not be scientifically sound, and there's absolutely no evidence that it holds true. But that's not going to stop us in this day and age, is it? Even though we have the internet. In fact, no, especially because we have the internet.
Yeah.
Tragically, groundhogs have clearly distributed themselves around the continent.
Okay, so nothing in Florida.
On the shape of a flattened groundhog, perhaps as a warning to motorists. So I remember my first encounter with a skunk, but it wasn't with the mammal itself, but rather with its zesty and intoxicating aroma.
Yeah, I've never smelled
How I miss the outdoors. Somebody needs to make a skunk-based perfume. That would be. We checked. They have in fact done that, which is pretty bizarre because for my British viewers, I was joking a moment ago. It is one of the most pungent and nasally raucous smells you'll ever experience, and you'll know it when you smell it. At first I had to ask though, because I started to think that Indiana just naturally smelled like arse. And it wouldn't have just been Indiana. I mean, striped skunks are found more or less in the entire United States, and so some people keep them as pets. And what I want to know right now is, how's quarantine working out for you? I mean, do you let them in the house? Do they let rip in the kitchen? I've heard that odour is only emitted when they feel threatened. So I suppose presumably, since they're a pet, that's not very often, although if my cat's anything to go by, it'll be every time the garbage men turn up. And then it's just competing smells. Don't be fooled by the name. This beautiful creature, the Virginia opossum, can be found in many quarters of the United States. In fact, if you remember that video I did recently on trees, the distribution of opossums seems to be loosely connected to the distribution of forests. Now, as I discovered on Twitter this week, if you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin and you're looking at this map and thinking, why aren't my opossums represented? That's not fair. It's because this map is slightly out of date, but I do understand that some have ventured up into those two states. The bigger question about this map, though, is what the heck is going on the Washington-Oregon border? It looks like some sort of marsupial boundary dispute.
That's the Columbia River.
The Columbia River runs along that border. Why don't you find opossums along other riverways as well on this map? I'm not sure there's a lot of love out there for opossums, and it's easy to see why. They generally look quite silly, unlike these adorable bastards.
Oh, I love a whitetail deer.
Just to clarify, deer absolutely exist in the United Kingdom, and just like in the United States, you normally encounter them when you're hitting them with your car. But we don't have the same kind of deer, and when I lived in Indiana, I would see deer quite regularly, you know, just sometimes just meandering through a wood and across a road. It's their own fault in many ways. And in Indiana and much of the east of the United States, and even some of the west, you're most likely to encounter what is known as a white-tailed deer.
There's a lot of good hunting of whitetail in Mexico. I think a lot of guys go down to Mexico for whitetail hunting.
Is it called that? Because it's a deer and it has a white tail. In all fairness to them and all deer around the world, they are absolutely adorable, or should that be adorable? Sorry about that. And our next entry is no exception.
Mule deer.
A mule deer, that's the other really prominent type of deer that you'll find in the United States, specifically out west. I obviously live in the Midwest and I spend most of my time here, but I have encountered a mule deer. Not here, but in Salt Lake City. I did have to clarify with the internet this week that is what this is, but you can tell. In fact, there are a number of ways you can tell. Number one, make sure it doesn't have a white tail. One of the subspecies of a mule deer is the black-tailed deer. But if you're not so inclined to look at its arse, then rearrange the letters and look at its ears. Arse is an anagram of ears. A mule deer has some absolutely enormous lugs, just like a mule or Prince Charles.
Okay. Ah, the best
The
one.
bald eagle. Now, you don't usually find America's national bird hovering over the skies of Chicago. And outside of seeing this one at Indianapolis Zoo, I don't think I really encountered them in the wild until that trip out west. It was amazing. I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I was taking one of those boat tours of the big lake. It was beautiful, right? But I wasn't expecting much more than just a nice, relaxing boat ride with beautiful scenery. Until the tour guide just casually pointed at the trees and said, yeah, there's 8 bald eagles. What? What? Action? That's amazing. Show me, make them fly. They're not remote controlled. They don't work like that. And I think one of them did. It hovered down toward the water because they generally populate themselves around large waterways because they're keen on fishing. And they're an absolutely stunning animal. I mean, they look amazing. I mean, look at those talons. But here's an interesting fact about them. They're not bald, right? The name actually comes from the fact that when that name was given, the word bald just meant white-headed. And all I can think is, has anybody told the birds? I bet they're really self-conscious. Coyotes are found all across the United States to the extent that many years ago during this past February, one even showed up outside of our door in Chicago.
Really?
Between these 2 narrow fences that we have outside, it had gotten itself stuck, which really didn't do anything for tired old coyote stereotypes perpetuated by Looney Tunes. Now, before I could get to it, it had actually freed itself, which is a shame because I just turned to my wife and said, oh, can we get one? That they're not domestic animals, so don't get any bright ideas. They eat small rodents, they eat rabbits, and they attack chickens. So it's sort of like me when I was 9. You know, be careful of them, be wary. They don't typically attack humans, but it has been known to happen in the past. And I thought I should just mention that as a kind of warning to any British people or anybody coming to the United States that sort of encounters these and thinks they're just a general dog, because they are from the canine family. Maybe don't pet them. All that said, to bring this video entirely full circle, they also hunt and sometimes kill raccoons, which is sort of the real life equivalent of the T-Rex eating the raptors in Jurassic Park. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below your favorite wild animal and whether you keep it as a pet. Throughout the last few weeks.
That's pretty cool, guys. I personally, I would love to see a bald eagle. Obviously mine are gonna be a lot different. I think I'm gonna encounter a lot of bugs down in the south, down in Florida. I'll definitely encounter a bunch of alligators, hopefully not too many. I mean, when we have a house, we're gonna obviously have that, you know, sort of secure fencing around the like a dome over the pool and stuff like that, and obviously don't walk right next to lakes. But yeah, I'll encounter different things. I would really love to go out west and see a bald eagle. Spent some time in Nevada a couple years ago, never saw a bald eagle at all. I suppose there are probably hot spots for them, but a bald eagle definitely is my favorite wild animal that I would love to see. I've never seen one in person other than in a zoo, and that's not really the same thing. You want to see them in the wild, you know, it's a whole different experience, I'm sure. And another wild animal that I personally have a love for is elk. I love elk. I think they're absolutely beautiful animals, and they have incredible bugles, and they produce really, really good meat. For those of you who are hunters out there, I'm sure you already know that. There's a really good guy called Cameron Haynes. He works full time, but he's also a professional hunter in his spare time, and he likes a lot of Colorado elk. I would love to go on an elk hunt with a bow, but I've never really used a bow properly. Might have to be with a firearm, with a rifle, but maybe I'll just practice with a bow first. But yeah, absolutely, yeah, love it. I love an elk. They're absolutely beautiful animals. Those elk balls are incredible. But anyway, guys, that was really, really cool. I love Laurence. He's really, really charismatic, and he's great to listen to. And I learned a bunch from him always. I always learn a bunch of things. It's important for me since I'm moving to the US to learn these things. So thank you so much, guys, for being here. Thank you for the support. And don't forget that if you want to support this channel, you can hit that super thanks button. And it does go a long way in helping this channel. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.